There you go. Now everybody knows that the weird things are about to happen. Because otherwise, wait, does it make them less weird that we announce that they're about to happen? Because then it's like prepared.
Sometimes.
things.
Sometimes just no preparation makes a difference.
Yo, 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 yo. Check, check, check.
Justin seems like his mic went away to me.
No, I'm talking now. Am I talking?
No. Oh, now you are. Okay.
Yeah, I
perfect.
just
Yeah,
wasn't
it's much better.
talking. My mouth wasn't working. That's more like it. First time for everything, I guess.
All right. All right. I think we got 2 shots for everyone.
Do we?
What's that?
Yeah, I guess we do.
Yeah,
Hey, look at that. We do.
we sure do.
Yeah, gosh dang it. We do.
All right. Yeah. You want to tank us? You want to tank us?
Tankus McGankus.
I've been tanking this show for a long time. Brian.
Okay, here. I'll go ahead and call you in. Here you go. 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the Weird Things podcast. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Brian Brushwood
Hello, hello.
and Mr. Justin Robert Young.
Well, hello, friends.
Gentlemen, I would love to say that I was happy to report that the astronauts on board the Boeing Starliner
They
are
made it
now-
back. Hooray! They made it back,
Made it.
Brian. Brian! Woo! They made
Wait,
it back.
No, that was a dream I had. Sorry.
Hold on.
Still up there.
We're just hearing now. Unfortunately, they have not made it back. I got a little ahead of myself. No, not back yet, huh? Do they at least get the Olympics up there?
Maybe, probably.
Yeah.
You know, if NASA pays for the pay-per-view package.
Are they upgrading them to 4K or?
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't want to make too much of it, but as we know, the Starliner had docked and there had been some issues. So far, NASA has said, hey, yeah, it's no big issue. Boeing, like, we're just working things through. They have another version of that spacecraft on the ground that they are testing through thrusters and stuff. There's a helium leak, but they say that's controllable, whatever. Meanwhile, NASA wrote a check for I gotta check this out. Like, this was a very
their
interesting
mouth
sort of
wrote
story.
A check that their body couldn't cash.
That can happen too. Let me get you the exact.
Did their body make a promise?
Sometimes that happens, and Cameron Diaz forces you off the cliff. Was that too deep? Was it too deep of a reference there?
Oh no, I teed you up for it.
Yeah, I know, but I mean for everybody else, just saying.
Oh,
that
no.
with people with real lives, people with well-developed, emotionally stable people.
They should open
who-
their
not
eyes.
not man children who sit around obsessing over every little funny bit of nostalgia from their childhood. By the way, in After Things, we're going to talk about the new Marvel announcements.
Hey!
So there was a statement that came out, and I want to get the number right because NASA has been saying, yeah, everything's cool, we're all good, just doing tests and stuff, just doing tests. And we know that, sure, we were going to bring him back at a certain point. And they apparently, there we go. NASA and Boeing's, so this is Tim Fernholz has said this on Twitter. It says NASA and Boeing's careful parsing of their work on Starliner has walked the line of transparency. But the agency did just lie to reporters about the July 14th study. As Space Guy shows here, it will be a major blow to its credibility. So what it was is Eric Berger, who writes for Ars Technica, who's a fantastic space journalist. He covers the topic really, really well. I enjoy reading Eric Berger's coverage. He's one of these guys that's just grown into the role of covering this topic and become, I think, a domain expert on the state of space, where a lot of people cover tech or not. So there was the debate was, hey, have you talked to like SpaceX? You thought about doing that? And NASA's like, no. But
it turns out
NASA,
they're not saying no, 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 no. It turns out their fingers were in their ears saying, nah, 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 I can't hear you.
Well, so Eric points out that NASA issued a $266,000 task award to SpaceX on July 14th, 2 weeks ago, for a special study for emergency response. NASA said this study was not directly related to Starliner's problems. You know, hey, we're just doing a special study right now. Why is everybody pointing fingers? But apparently, two sources told Ars, meaning two of Eric's contacts, which I suspect are probably really good, said, "Oh yeah, no, it's definitely related to this."
So they have paid for the contingency plan of possibly having SpaceX get these astronauts back.
Yeah, they paid for a study to say what's the feasibility, what do you need to do to be able to do this. Totally unrelated.
Totally unrelated.
Happen.
Yeah.
While they're up there,
it's just contingency
season.
This is where one roommate points to the fact that this has been on the whiteboard the entire time. The fact that right now is a good time for us to clean the sink, just coincidental.
Yeah. So again, this is an award to SpaceX to say, hey, what would it cost?
Get these folks back.
Yeah.
Is it like a weird bit of good news for Boeing that this is not a slower news time? Because I kind of feel like this would have the potential to be like #1 story in the country if we didn't have the Olympics and a presidential election and everything else that's going on right now.
Guaranteed. We would be seeing like mock-ups of the Martian poster that says "Bring them home." Look,
if we saw wall-to-wall coverage on CNN for the Malaysian plane, like how are American astronauts in space? How does that grab you?
Yeah, I think that they're certainly benefiting from people who don't really care about space, number one, and all the other distracting things going on there. And so, yeah. And also NASA, federal agencies some of them have become, you can tell when one is really good at managing the press and one is really bad at managing the press, as we've seen some recent examples of that.
Mm-hmm.
NASA, because they continuously have to defend their funding, very much has had a very, I'd say, somewhat cozy relationship with the press in many ways. A lot of stuff has happened that never really gets much attention because they're able to sort of, because it's often, nobody bothers to go through the reports, nobody bothers to go into that stuff or dig very deeply. So I'd say that's part of it too, is that nobody's paying attention. Also, NASA just says the things they know that they don't say this because that will trigger this response.
Yeah.
So if we use this phrasing, we'll be fine.
How does this resolve, Maine? You got a good head for this. Like what is the timeline and what are the next steps?
I think that's the hard part for us, is to understand from the outside, like, okay, what is your go, no go? Clearly, we had a point where and this is the thing where I don't really kind of wording, like, they clearly do not feel safe to return them right now. They do not feel it's safe enough to return them right now. It could be safe, but they don't have enough information to say that it's safe. So that is a big failure. The thing that you're supposed to return them like 2 weeks later, and you're like, Yeah, we don't know if it's safe or not. We got to figure that out. That's bad that you put
Well,
astronauts in this situation.
I think it's worth reminding folks that safety is a spectrum, and it's like there's 100% we're confident. Then there's like, once you get below, let's say 80% confidence, it's like, well, we're not going to gamble. We're not going to roll dice on screwing up and being the folks who burned up astronauts on reentry. But certainly their safety balance is not where everyone would like it to be.
Well, and the problem is though that they had problems on the pad. Remember, the launch got delayed like a week or 2 weeks. They got a launch delayed. To Weird Am I saying Boeing needs the money train to keep plugging. That's the problem. There is no money train for them now. This was a cost. This is a fixed cost mission. So Boeing is losing tons of money on this right now. Boeing is very much in the red on this. But the point was that we knew leading up to it, there had been problems. They went to go launch. They pushed the launch back 2 weeks because there was a problem with like some of these same systems were having problems. And then they said, yeah, we'll go ahead and launch anyways. Gets into orbit. They go to dock. They still have thruster problems. They manage to dock. And you're like, why did you launch? Like, why did you thought you were fine, but the history of this program has been you thought you were fine and it turned out you were not fine. So, but yeah, Brian's right. Like, there absolutely is this spectrum, and there's this line of saying, but there's a point where they reached a point and they said, yeah, we can't do this 2-week return right now because we just fell below our threshold and we need to do more data. And they might find out like, oh yeah, it's a software thing. I think we can fix this, whatever. I think that's what they're hoping for, but it's August now.
Yeah.
We're in August and we're going, when are these, what's your plan? And I think they're afraid to say, and I think Boeing is panicking and begging him, do not say your backup is SpaceX because it will be an utter humiliation for Boeing Space. And NASA wants, here's the thing, NASA wants to have multiple partners because they don't want to have one partner, i.e. SpaceX, say, oh, well, we're the only game in town, because then they're in a similar situation there before, which I understand that.
And it's not just NASA that wants that. It's us, fans of space travel and of America doing very well in the realm of space travel. We want multiple different competitors out there.
Yeah, and I think that the problem is you don't want to prop somebody up though that you shouldn't be propping up though. That's the other problem is that I don't think SpaceX and NASA necessarily, or SpaceX and Blue Origin are treated. NASA, SpaceX and Boeing are treated fairly. I would say that SpaceX had to undergo a lot of skepticism and a lot of scrutiny on stuff. So anyhow, I hope all turns out well. I hope it's an easy fix. I'm hoping to do it. I'd love for them to be able to return everybody on Starliner. I'm rooting for that. We're all rooting for that. We're all rooting for a safe return on Starliner.
Well,
but
I'll hold my breath. So hopefully they don't.
So in the world of weird and unpredictable news, you guys see this happen last week? Old Faithful.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, in Yellowstone National Park.
The one that reliably there's every 15 minutes would spout out a bunch of boiling hot water.
Yeah, and so it turns out a geyser at Old Faithful said, "Hey, you know what's fun? This is not Old Faithful. This is a few miles from there, but this was another geyser that was known to kind of like produce stuff. Had a rather unpredicted large explosion, rapid ejection of boiling water, steam, and mud that was caught on video. And you can see the boardwalk area. I'm going to send this to you, Brian. If you can't
sure.
this. It was another area where they had like, hey, you can come check this out. This is totally cool. And oh my God, what happened to my email? This is a panic. Oh, there we go. It's all back.
Is happening, people.
So there is deep inside the earth, mole people and the deep dwelling gods. And normally they keep them at bay. And every now and then they fail to keep them at bay. And the deep dwelling gods let their disapproval be known. And we on the surface feel the wrath of this. It can be earthquakes. It can be to tsunamis, and sometimes you can be a tourist who just wants to see some hot water jet out of the ground, and the next thing you know, nature attacks you.
Well, here we're looking at an article from the BBC that has the headline "Yellowstone Blast
Oh, jeez.
Sends Visitors Fleeing for Cover."
Oh my God! So that was the boardwalk. The charred
Yes.
remains of driftwood are the what was once a boardwalk around this area.
Oh, I got the link too. I'll send you the footage. This is amazing.
Okay, all right. Here, tee this up for us then.
So what we're looking at is there were some tourists who managed to take some image of this. Now, when you go to Yellowstone and you go to one of these things, Brian and Justin just pointed out the boardwalk. These things are often very, very predictable because underground there's like some reservoir or something that fills up to a certain amount and then it releases. It's physics and it's just predictable kind of thing. Apparently, every now and then nature has other plans, and this is a case where nature had other plans, and so you had some tourists who were there to watch this up close. And you see a wooden structure, wooden benches that have been there for 50, 60 years or something like that, because these things are reliable. Old Faithful got the name, Old Faithful, because you just rely on it. This is not Old Faithful. This is maybe old, not so faithful.
So,
Oh my God.
Nobody got hurt. That's why we're laughing.
Hydrothermal explosions sent hot water debris about 100 feet into the air. This
Sometimes
happened
you got
in the
Old
Brisket
Faithful,
Basin
and then you got
area.
Old
This
Doug.
is a collection
And
of
Yeah.
Old Doug
springs,
sometimes
a
shows
couple
up after an
miles
all-night
actually
bender,
north of
still
Old
high on meth,
Faithful.
and wants to
A
play Call of
scientist with
Duty,
the
and
park
is not
says these
here to
kinds of
hear
explosions
any
do
reason he
happen
can't play it at
when
full volume.
passageways in the natural plumbing network under
That's
Yellowstone
amazing.
basically get clogged.
It looks
creates a
like
buildup of heat
some kind of
and
massive
pressure.
bomb
The water
blast.
suddenly
Right down to the
slashes
mushroom
the steam
cloud that is emerging
no
from
one
it.
was hurt, which is good news, but the area
That's
remains closed until further
incredible.
notice
Old
for
Doug.
repairs.
Wow.
Mother Nature's Mother Nature.
Yeah, so I put a link up there that said,
Thank you, Todd. Check out this dramatic video. You may have seen this on your.
I can still hear the audio, Brian. There we go. Okay. We're in the opening act of a Michael Bay movie. In the next scene, a divorced scientist clutching seismic data is about to get snubbed for being the president's science advisor because of the current political turmoil.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we can't look at these papers right now. We got an election to win.
Yeah.
It's like, literally, we're in that scene right now. And so, yeah,
The
hydrothermal
Yellowstone
explosion.
super volcano is real, people.
And then there was another one. One of our longtime. Let me pull this up. One of our longtime listeners sent because we were getting RJ Jackson, the ever reliable RJ, had sent this, which is they're finding dark oxygen in the ocean.
What?
What? So apparently, at the bottom of the seafloor, something's producing oxygen. We don't know what it is.
Darkly.
Yeah.
Wait, why is it dark oxygen?
Because much like dark gravity or dark energy, it is mathematically showing up, but there's nothing in our current models that would explain why that would happen.
Why it's there?
Yeah.
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 Let me get the. I'm gonna have
So we have no idea how anybody would be breathing oxygen that deep into the ocean, and yet there is oxygen.
Well, there's something creating it. So let me have my old friend ChatGPT summarize this.
Yeah.
Scientists have discovered dark oxygen being produced in the deep ocean by metallic nodules on the seafloor. Unlike oxygen production from photosynthesis, which requires sunlight, these nodules can split seawater into hydrogen and oxygen at depths of 5 kilometers where no sunlight reaches. This process occurs because the nodules act like batteries, generating electric currents that electrolyze seawater. The discovery, published in Nature Geoscience, raises concerns about deep sea mining, which could disrupt this oxygen production and harm marine life. Mining companies are interested in these modules for their valuable materials, but scientists, including Professor Andrew Sweetman, warn of potential ecological damage. These findings suggest similar processes might occur on other planets, possibly creating an oxygen environment suitable to life.
This is
So
brilliant because one of and you can correct me, Andrew, because I know you are more literate.
Love to correct you, even when I don't know.
Yes, there's that too. But as we scan exoplanets, one of the things that we look for is oxygen, because as far as we know, there's only one way to produce oxygen, and that's aerobic, anaerobic life systems like we have here on Earth. However, water is of course made of, hydrogen and oxygen, and there are times that you just run a battery through it and you're going to get hydrogen over here, oxygen over here. So the idea that at the bottom of the ocean you would have an anode and a cathode that would create an artificial or a natural battery, and all you would need is current, and then you would have oxygen pop out one side and hydrogen pop out the other. That's extraordinary. I don't know if I'm grasping this high concept sci-fi idea correctly or not.
Sounds good to me in my Marvel Comics understanding of science.
Yeah, right.
I think that and Radami pointed this out in the chat, says if there's anaerobic oxygen, then maybe oil isn't made from fossils too. Well, we have very good evidence that oil is produced from fossils. We're very, very sure about that because when we look at where you find them, the fossil presence, whatever. But it doesn't mean that the only place you can create a complex hydrocarbon is from the breakdown of organic matter. And there has been, theorizing whatever, that you could have other forms of that come from, non-biological processes, whatever. I don't know.
Like for example, on the moon Titan around Saturn, we know that there are liquid rains of methane, and theoretically, if we just scooped it up, that would be an awful lot of rocket fuel that we could use for starships at that point, right?
Yeah, that's actually why both Blue Origin and SpaceX have designed their rockets around using methane. One of the reasons. Hydrogen is, very, very, very difficult to contain, and there are hydrogen fanatics out there that get upset every time I point that out. But hydrogen is just not a fun thing to try to handle. Versus methane, you can find methane in just about everywhere except the moon. Moon's got hydrogen. Moon's got really no methane. And so, yeah, that's one of the reasons the forward-thinking things was if you start, maybe a little bit too forward-thinking, but it is the idea that you could, mine methane on, other planets, get it there. So, on moons and stuff. So the abiotic oil theory, that was the idea that there could be oil produced from these other things. Now,
Yeah, now,
and
now
it's
the abiotic oil theory. We are now entering the territory where the only way I know about this is because I listened to enough Art Bell at 3 a.m. But the idea is, what if petroleum had because ultimately sunlight creates energy, something becomes complex hydrogens. What we assume it is that's all living tissue that over time, pressure, and curation becomes this highly dense form of energy. But the abiotic petroleum theory is basically like, why you got to add dinosaurs to this? What if there's some process that we don't understand by which energy, because we have plenty of energy coming in from the sun, is able to become petroleum hydrocarbons? Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's a theory that it's one of these things, like, I won't completely discount. I would say that some of the claims for people make for it, like the biggest criticism is, then you should find a ton of oil in fault lines. Then if it's not connected anything to biological processes and it's a more mechanical process, then you'd look at where you get large reservoirs, would be like fault lines. You should find a lot of oil there, which maybe there's a good argument against that. But I tend to think it could be yes and others. Like we talked about before, there's different degrees of helium, and like there's places where helium just continues to seep up from the ground. And and the helium is very much probably the helium that we're finding now is just a byproduct of the nuclear reaction, that there may be a nuclear core, or nuclear processes going on in the Earth's core. And so in that, one of the byproducts there, because you have all these uranium, these other metals that can have reactions and stuff. So other processes too, the idea that just because we're used to biology doing it doesn't mean that you can't do it from some of the an example of this is like, you think in cooking, right? When you think like, if I want to cook food, I apply heat. Well, you can apply friction too. You put a bunch of egg whites in a bowl and you take a whisk and you basically whisk that enough and you basically start applying enough energy to those chains that they start to form into something else. And you can use acid to cook. There's all these different ways in which you can form something. And the fact that we're used to biology producing a thing, and oil's not a complex protein, it doesn't need like a ribosome to make this thing. Oil is something that you can synthesize whatever, so that there could be some biological process to it. Sure. And that's like I'm saying, we're seeing with oxygen, like we were no oxygen except for whatever came from where Earth formed and the stellar explosion that formed our elements. And then, photosynthesis starts to release, starts to break up, free up all this oxygen that was in our, source. And again, we're not actually producing oxygen molecules to make that clear. We're actually just breaking apart other things and releasing the oxygen.
We're shuffling. We're shuffling oxygen.
Yeah, applying the energy to it. So Earth is weird. I don't know if you know this, but the Earth and everything else is, very, very weird. And it's one of these things too that, well, you think about like when we think about like Earth exploration, and then you look at what's the deepest we've ever dug.
Not very deep.
Yeah. Let's go.
What are we talking about? 12, 13 feet?
Deepest.
I would be shocked if it was in the multiples of hundreds.
All right. Multiple hundreds of what?
Miles.
That we've dug?
Yeah.
Brian, I like your enthusiasm.
Huh?
I like it a lot.
Oh, no.
The deepest hole that we have ever dug is the Kola Super Deep Borehole, which is in Russia, of course. And it is the maximum true vertical depth of 12,000 meters, 7.1 miles, 7.76 miles.
Wow.
7 miles. We haven't cracked that 8 mile barrier.
Call M&M, Mom Spaghetti.
And to give you a comparison, that is 40,000 feet, which is, maybe 8,000 more feet than Mount Everest. So we've barely dug the depth of an Everest, 8 miles, barely dug 8 miles. How long does it take you to walk 8 miles, Brian?
Well, it depends. Am I walking or just falling directly downwards? Because I'm pretty fast at the one.
Yeah. So you think about that. Like we have really cool sensors now to sort of look at like what's going on, listening to sound, etc. When we get, you get volcanic eruptions and things that are inside, actually, well, sort of certain levels are there. The idea that we've only been able to explore less than 8 miles into our core is kind of amazing. And the one of the things I've heard, and I don't know if it's still true or not, but as deep as we've ever dug, we've always found life. Like we found there are things that eat, they eat rock, like rock eating microbes, and you find them. Like I don't know if that's still true, but I remember hearing that was true and thinking that was really cool. And that's one of the things when you talk about. We said this before on the show, when we got slammed by an asteroid 65 million years ago, and we have not forgiven you, whoever did
that. Never forget.
It meant, not only did it mean a big rock hit us, it meant big pieces of Earth got launched into space and reached escape velocity, which meant that there are pieces of Earth drifting well across the galaxy now, because 65 million years ago.
They're Earth things. They belong as Earthlings.
But they could have landed in other places, Brian, and they would have microbes and other things in there. There are Earth microbes could have been landing on could have landed on Mars, 64 million years ago. These things could have drifted on Mars. And so that's one of the things that we think about. And it's not the first time we got impacted either. And so if you say there's a billion plus history of life or multi-billion-dollar history of life on Earth, and we have probably had dozens of events like that, more even earlier on, our bacteria, Earth bacteria, is all over the galaxy.
Yeah,
all over the galaxy.
we have spread our stank.
And that'll be one of the questions of, if we go to Mars and we dig up a sample and we say, hey, look, we found what looks like, a bacterium or some process of this, we're going to be going, yeah, but it just come from us like millions of years. We will immediately go, yeah, but it might just be early contamination from us. And we'll immediately not be as impressed.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, go ahead. Sorry, Justin.
I was just going to say, what is impressive is patreon.com/weirdthings. At patreon.com/weirdthings, you, my dear listener, can support the show, get a bonus episode each and every week. Head on over there right now, patreon.com/weirdthings.
And meanwhile, on the subject of NASA and space and kind of the cool stuff that's going on there was a discovery, Curiosity. Remember Curiosity?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh,
Still
I read
doing its
about
little
this
work
one.
there. Yeah, good to know that some parts of our government work. And it found a very interesting rock, and the rock it found rocks made of pure sulfur. And let me summarize what this means in bullet points for you. Again, using our co-host ChatGPT. Curiosity
meanwhile, I'm gonna try
rover
to find
discovered.
photos. Go ahead.
What's that?
Meanwhile, I'm going to try to find photos. Keep going.
Yeah. Curiosity rover discovered rocks made of pure sulfur on Mars, report on May 30th. The rocks revealed yellow sulfur crystals the first time finding on Mars. The discovery contrasts the previous findings of sulfur-based minerals, as these rocks consist of elemental sulfur. Elemental sulfur forms under specific conditions not previously associated with the explored area. The findings were made in the Geddes Valles Channel, thought to be shaped by ancient floods and landslides. So this is an area with a lot of geological activity. The channel's landscape features debris mounds formed by both water flows and avalanches. Curiosity's 41st rock sample was taken from a large rock called Mammoth Lakes for further analysis. The mission aims to study Mars' ancient terrain and its potential to have supported microbial life. So, kind of cool. I don't know what it means in the grand scheme of things, but, shiny rocks impress me just as much as they have, my ancestors.
That's interesting because I think we read two different articles, because the one that I had found was talking about leopard spotted rocks that in the Jezero crater. And this was a different probe. Perseverance was able to find some interesting looking rocks that they said would be consistent with ancient life.
Very cool. Let me go into the NASA. But if you want to read, the what's significant, why leopard spots, Brian, whatever your name is.
According to lifescience.com, NASA Mars rover finds the first compelling detection of potential fossilized life on the red planet. A peculiar leopard-spotted rock found beside an ancient dried-out river in Mars' Jezero Center contains some tantalizing clues of ancient life, so says NASA. But basically, they're all like, yeah, these are consistent with patterns that they've seen created by life here on Earth. If they're not necessarily saying this is it, we found it, but they are saying this is pretty consistent with what we would expect from an old riverbed.
Yeah, so I found the NASA article on this. If you go to science.nasa.gov/resources, well, then it's Perseverance finds a rock with leopard spots. Let me see. Running the length of the rock are large white calcium sulfate veins. Between those veins are bands of material whose reddish color suggests the presence of hematite, one of the minerals that gives Mars its distinctive rusty hue. Scientists are particularly interested in the millimeter-sized, irregularly shaped light patches on the central reddish band that are surrounded by a thin ring of dark material akin to leopard spots. Finding this type on sedimentary terrestrial rocks can occur when chemical reactions involving hematite turn the rocks from red to white. Those reactions can also release iron and phosphate, possibly casting in black halos to form, and they can be an energy source for microbes. So I guess that's the thing to look in, is like that would be a place where microbes might want to go snack. Interesting. So there was a story, and the we've talked about this before, and the original sensory package on the Viking probe, one of the original NASA scientists had just insisted that it had found evidence of what could be like evidence for life on Mars. And it's been a very debated discussion. There's other people taking that apart and said, no, it wasn't capable of this, whatever. And he said, no, we actually had this probe and whatever could kind of do that. And so it's the idea that it may have found it in a way that wasn't a predictable way. It was outside of a pattern what they thought they were going to find. Let me see this. In the 40 years, this is from phys.org. In the 40 years since these experiments, scientists have been able to reconcile the conflicting results. And that is because that there were some very weird measurements that came out of the Viking probe. And however, a small minority of scientists argues the Viking results were positive for life on Mars. One prominent proponent of this view is Gilbert Levin, experimenter of the Viking LR experiment. At first, Levin thought that the LR results were unclear and stated merely that the results were consistent with biology. However, in 1997, after many years of further experience on Earth, along with new discoveries on Mars, and the discovery of microorganisms living under conditions on Earth as severe as those on Mars, he and his Viking co-experimenter, Dr. Patricia Stewart, have argued that Mars results are best explained by living organisms. So the point they were trying to make was, back when they did the original Viking probes, they had a sensor package that was designed to look for life, but it was very much what we would think life, where life would function within our 1960s, early 70s understanding of where life could exist. This is prior to our discovery of extremophiles and other organisms that can live in very different environments. So they got the results back and they're like, yeah, it can't be life because of these conditions. He and one of his these were NASA researchers, fellow researchers have then since later on said, we look at this data now, and now what we know about how life could exist, this looks like the best explanation is that we found the trace elements or gases produced by active biological functions. Which, TBD.
Yeah, right. That's the perpetual god of the gaps. It's like, which means now we have two mysteries to solve.
Yeah. But I think that NASA is not, NASA is ready to say, hey, look, we found it, but they want to make sure they've really found it. Mm-hmm. There have been a couple, we've talked about this before.
Some people jumping the gun a little bit.
Yeah, in the 1990s, I remember Clinton did the speech. Look, we think we found life on Mars, and it was this really weird. It was on a rock from Mars found on Earth because it was hit, from an asteroid impact, and it had these really little unique-looking structures that the problem was they looked biological, but they were way, way smaller than anything we'd ever observed on Earth. And people are like, this is probably a chemical process we don't know about, although it looks organic. And so it was very much a ... And also probably should not have done a presidential press conference to say we think we found life on Mars. And that went down the memory hole very, very quickly. Although you can watch that in the introduction. I forget which movie they use it, one of the alien invasion movies or something. They just take that clip of Bill Clinton talking about life on space.
I believe, I know for sure that they used the clip of him talking about the importance of... they took out of context Clinton talking about the first complete genetic map of DNA, and they used it in the movie Contact because, it's all just so much gibberish if you don't know specifically what he's talking about. But that movie in particular did a fun trick of taking actual clips from various media luminaries and recontextualizing them.
Yeah. And that was by Zemeckis, of course, who did that with Forrest Gump. So we had the whole event with arsenic-based life, which felt like that might have been a rush to publish, because then it sort of a lot of things fell apart on that. And there were some people who said that looked like not the best day for NASA. And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, we found a crazy thing. The problem is if you said, hey, I found a crazy thing and I showed it to 5 people and 3 out of 5 said this is BS and explained why it is. And then I just come out and say, yeah, we found a crazy thing. Nobody knows what's going on. And you have like 3 other people going, we told you what was going on.
Yeah.
So We've had that happen before, but it's awesome. I watched a presentation by a astrophysicist who was studying black holes, and he talked about all of the new data we're getting from the space telescopes and what's happening now, and like what Webb is going to be giving, what Webb is giving us, whatever. And he pointed out a very, very interesting problem, and that is we have a tremendous amount of data, but we don't have enough compute and people to look at all this data. And part of it comes down to, he's got a lab, he's got limited funding, he can only do, a certain number of things. And that we're going to be, over the next decade or so, have way more, the amount of data that's going to be produced about space in the next decade is going to exceed the previous several centuries. And the number of people there to process that is increasing substantially.
But by which you mean what? That we have more people who have more AIs at their fingertips, who have more free time to try to analyze it, or
that would be good. We just don't have right now. We don't. Like right now, we're going to be getting petabytes and petabytes of data about deep space and whatnot from Webb, et cetera. And there's not enough people or resources to go through that. And it's going to be a very useful place for AI is to start using AI systems to do that. And I guarantee you that right now I played with like doing some demonstrations of how to use like these vision models for like doing robot vision and stuff. I've talked to a couple people in the space about what they're using with AI, and they're doing it, but literally it's like 1 or 2 grad students working on this. There is, some stuff at NASA, whatever, but a dedicated amateur could probably build some really cool AI tools for helping with this process. Hint, anybody out there?
Yeah, get on it.
Because there's just going to be way more data than we have. We found we had some of the interesting things on Mars. Remember the things like school students discover Mars discovery. I don't know if you remember this. Some middle school students found a cave on Mars. Basically, they were a bunch of middle school students at Evergreen Middle School in Cotton, California, were looking for lava tubes and just started going through there was a thing called the Mars Student Imaging Program, and they started just pouring through images and stuff, and they found, hey, look, we think we found a new lava tube.
That's wild.
It's just, what'd you guys do in class? I used yarn and popsicle sticks to make a Yeti. What'd you do? Oh, we found a several mile long lava tube on Mars.
Pretty sweet.
Okay. So that's cool. And I think I'm excited about that. What Brian was talking about is like, how do we encourage more of that? More opportunities for the amateur explorer?
Well, the answer per the authors of Abundance is more X prizes, money, just bounties, just like I don't want to bring it up again if it's uncomfortable for Justin, but I suspect one of the best investments Justin ever made was jokingly saying he would pay a flat fee for anyone who could find anything that he needed to delete from his Twitter feed. He spent a lot of money, but Justin
did not spend a lot of money.
Yeah, okay.
But I did spend, I think maybe $200, something like that. I forget what my bounty was to find objectionable tweets, but there were a few that were language of an era for which I would. I'd rather just get a jump on saying that I had deleted it, and then there were some references to old comedy sketches that I was like, no, leave them there. The YouTube video still stands.
I like that expression, language of an era, and then we're gonna have to start qualifying the era. Are we 90s Boys in the Hood?
Yeah.
Are we 70s car wash? Like what? Tell me the era first, and then
are we 1964 Confederates?
Yeah, no, I would say
1922 Amos and Andy radio show.
My era would be a flannel clad extreme 90s era that has softened over the years.
In which minorities were present, but given scripts and specific things they're supposed to follow.
Before we came to our Gilded Age with racially segregated political fundraisers.
Oh my God. So maybe we should think about doing a bounty. You know, I'm happy to put up some money for like a cool bounty. We could do like, if people are listeners, if people want to suggest like what would be a cool thing. Like one could be a tool that you know, maybe it is a tool like an AI tool to go process. I don't know what's needed out there, so I'm completely ignorant. But you know, we could say like, oh, do we want to build like a cool like AI powered tool that would go through Mars images or you know, photos of space stuff? I don't know. Let's hear suggestions. What would be a cool tool? What's a cool problem that we think that an amateur can maybe build, and then some proposals, and then figure out maybe we do our own the weird prize.
Where should people email?
Email. Do it to, what is a good email? Contact@andrewmain.com.
There we go. If you have an idea, if you or someone you love has an idea for building an AI tool to go through a tremendous amount of space data, send
further any kind of
scientific deal at all. Contact@andrewmain.com.
And it could be a thing too, like if it's like, I want to build this thing, I think it's good. Tell us. That's fine. You don't
let
have
us
to pitch it
know.
for somebody
Call
else,
your
but,
own number
let us
on
know.
that. We'll figure it
We're
out.
into it, you know?
Yeah.
Cool.
Do we have any picks?
Yes.
Can we finally discuss the picks?
In
for our
after
listeners,
things. In after things. Or do we want to talk about it now? I don't know.
we could do our pick, and then we can go into the deeper aspects
The
of after things.
deeper elements of it.
Dive into that
So
pool.
last week, for our listener, the recommendation came up to see Deadpool and Deadpool and Wolverine, and Justin made a very funny joke. Finally, you know, Justin had said Brian could call 911 and end up spoiling Deadpool and Wolverine.
Don't know what you're talking about. This is unfair. This is
My wife, she's as motionless as Cassandra Nova when
so blood like coming from Wolverine and a Honda Odyssey front seat.
Yeah, it's as though there are 3 piercings, as though Wolverine was very angry. And over
My
the
clothes
liver.
were singed like so anyhow, spoilers. I started booking my tickets while I'm on the podcast. I'm telling my wife, hey, we got to go see this. I'm booking my tickets to go do this. And then Justin, you leave, and then Brian and I are off. You're on, and then Brian and I are talking, and then Brian says, Brian, you want to recap?
Well, we're still live on the air because for the first time ever, I'm the one who wrapped up the After Things podcast by saying it's been after, because I made the mistake of saying, okay, not a spoiler, at which point Andrew shouts, bye-bye, and then just hangs up, and then you get the Hall of Mirrors effect of image on image on image, and left alone,
No,
I'm like...
Brian, you go. No, Brian, no. You go. Justin wouldn't let me say this, but... And I go, click.
It was great. It was great. It was great.
Justin wouldn't let me say this, but it's like, Brian, I trust your judgment on a great number of things. But when I hear Justin wouldn't let me say this, I'm like, no.
My favorite part was immediately Andrew called and said, look, I love you, Brian. I just can't trust you on this. I'm like, understood, my guy. I know how Brian works. And then I say goodbye. 3 hours later, the phone rings. It's Andrew. Very clearly, he's in the car. I assume I said, did you see the movie? And he goes, yeah. And I said, then I have nothing left to spoil. Boop, boop, boop.
Deadpool and Wolverine. It's a big popular movie in a cinema near you. You should see it if you like movies. Comic book movies, to be specific, friend.
Love it. Love it. Love it. It's not it's one of these movies you go like, oh yeah, that part, this act, this whatever, but the sum is so much greater. It's just so fun.
And also, I've come to really, really love the plot, and we can talk about it more in the after in the after things. But for what look, it is an understanding of the Deadpool character that he is somebody that breaks the fourth wall and talks about things in a way that other comic book characters do not. But this plot-wise, especially compared to the first two, I think is something that actually is more impressive the more you kind of understand it. And we will talk about that. But for that reason, Deadpool and Wolverine is my pick as well for a second week in a row.
Yeah. Brian, we all in on it?
We're all in.
Gentlemen, it's been weird.
Life is a mystery. Everyone must stand alone.
I hear you call my name, and it feels like I have a well-trained bladder.
BRB.
Cool. Do 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 do. So have you used the voice mode a lot, Maine? Well, you're muted.
I used it for a full hour, almost an hour yesterday to catch up on some science stuff that I needed to for a meeting. And I found it very, very, very useful.
It's really compelling. It's really, really compelling.
Yeah, I think next week we could actually talk about that.
Well,
but yeah. No, I'm not trying to shut you down now. I'm going, oh yeah, should really talk about that.
Like that. Get it. You're stupid. Can't get it.
I know. I'm saying that's why we do next week, because maybe.
I just don't have it. My problem is I just don't have it right now, and I really like to have it.
Yeah.
Freundleben. Yeah. Do you have your app in light mode or dark mode?
Dark mode. Some things I just feel better about dark mode with.
I know, me too.
Doing a talk for a reason in 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just trying to put together a list of local people.
Yo.
All right. We ready?
Ready.
Yeah.
You want me to count you in?
Yeah, sorry, just trying to catch up on the thing here. Yes. Brian, count me in.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to After Things. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Brian Brushwood,
Hello, hello.
Justin Robert Young.
Hello.
Gentlemen, so we hinted at, rumored about, talked about in the previous episode of Weird Things. A lot's been happening in the Marvel Universe. And as middle-aged grown men, I think it's really important that we weigh in on this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, number one, target demo. Maine, are you on the right mic?
Probably not.
It sounds like you might be on your AirPods.
So, yeah. Something
My other
switched.
one.
There we go.
I switched because my other AirPods ran out of juice. So
There we go. All right. So do we want to start? Number one, spoilers for everything that involves the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you have not seen Wolverine versus Deadpool specifically, or Deadpool seriously, then take your life in your own hands, man. I'm not your dad, so just do whatever you want. But we are going to talk about it. Where do we want to start? Do we want to start with Wolverine and Deadpool? Do we want to start with Comic-Con?
Let's start with Wolverine and Deadpool, specifically that I watched it for a second time, and my daughter was seriously annoyed because I was barking laughter too loud at times. Now, I don't believe that it was false laughter, and I wasn't that guy trying to sell a bit, but it's like there are so many jokes that have nothing to do with the movie, and unless you are somebody who spent 20 years watching the behind the scenes saga, unless you know a good Feige reference when you see one, unless you know who played which failed attempt at creating which franchise, my 16-year-old daughter, I felt for her because it's like, well, this looks like a very annoying movie if you don't know all of the jokes. It's like your first time going to see Rocky Horror Picture Show before you know all of the inside bits.
Yeah, it has not stopped the movie from making a cajillion dollars, but certainly it is a movie that you appreciate if you have seen a lot of other movies. But then again, that's kind of, I think, what it wants to be is a movie that really rewards people for having loved superhero movies for a long time. And you often see that with other genres of like, it's a celebration of stage musicals or of this some kind of movie or something like that. It has all the pastiches, all the references to these old things, and this is that, obviously, but for a art form that has its DNA rooted in kind of like a teenage boy aesthetic, it is very teenage boy. It is very guns, knives, and anal sex jokes.
And lots of them.
Yes.
One might say loads of them.
Yes. A lot of them. Well, Brian, seeing it for the second time, what was a joke that stood out to you?
Mainly it was the big thing I noticed was the jokes that landed the first time do not land with more of a lay audience. Like you go on the first night, you're going to get a certain demographic of type of people who are going to be fired up about everything.
Nerds.
Yes, and in a, shall we say, more casual, traditional audience, it was really interesting just to see what did not land, and to actually have my daughter slap her hand over my mouth because I was annoying her by laughing at.
Okay,
good
but
nerd
what was a
humor.
joke you did laugh at that you liked?
I don't know how many people in that room got the joke that it wasn't Captain America, but instead Johnny Storm. I don't know how many people got the joke that that there were rumors of a Henry Cavill version of
Wolverine.
It's just it was strange on a second viewing, all the silences.
Well, remember, you went to a second viewing, right? So you weren't there with you're the second wave of people that heard, oh, you should check this out, So I mean that is a thing to keep in mind, is that the first generation people are like, oh my God, I got to go see this,
Yeah.
and then my parents saw it the other night. They loved it, and I guarantee you, yeah, they did not. They have not been following the deep lore all that much. But my mom hated it, which good success.
I was going to say, when you said your mom and dad loved it, I would have loved to see the out of the movie review of your mom for Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah, but again, she's a sport and she'll go see that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. No, your dad is a dude's dude. I think he would definitely love it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that was, I think, kind of that my dad could go see it. And again, my dad sees everything. So there is that fact. And my dad is the most dad when it comes to dad movies. But anyhow, to your point, Brian, like, yeah, I think a lot of people who are going to go see it because it's the movie everybody's talking about, like, yeah, they're not going to know, oh yeah, Chris Evans played Johnny Storm, not that, but I mean, but it was still, I think, very entertaining for very many people. And I despite you trash talking and dismissing the movie, Brian,
Okay, all right.
I loved
let
it.
me
Okay,
be
all right.
absolutely clear.
Yeah, I don't care about the jokes that weren't laughed at Brian's second viewing. I think we've spent enough time talking about that. Here's what I've come to appreciate about the movie, because I walked out of the movie and I was like, all right, look, I had a really, really good time. It might have been a movie that was made exactly for me because I get all of these jokes, and I laughed really, really hard when Channing Tatum showed up dressed like Gambit. I don't know if you would give it an award for plot, right? Like, and either the previous Deadpool movies were particularly, I think, well plotted. They are almost more parody movie-esque, where you just have a string so you can get to the gags and the jokes and everything that you need. But then I sat with it a little more, and after some clarification of some people on Reddit that made the same point, I came to realize that the plot of the movie is Deadpool becoming happy with the fact that he is a 20th Century Fox Marvel character. And that his arc, as he first gets to the TVA, is looking directly into the camera and saying, fuck you, Fox. I'm in the MCU now. Only to eventually not only save the universe where he wants to die for it, he wants to die to save it. Wolverine won't let him. But his last act before going and spending time with his friends is to tell the TVA, hey, get all these Fox and New Line Cinema Marvel characters out of the void. We want them in the MCU too. And I'm like, wow, this is like a really, really cool meta story where Matthew McFadyen's TVA character is just kind of an a-hole studio executive who's he's just like
Literally, the way they showed the timelines in Loki versus in Deadpool Wolverine. In Deadpool Wolverine, you look at the timelines and like, oh, those are all franchises.
Yes.
Those are literally franchises. We're going to be erasing these franchises one by one. And that was him. No, these franchises, there's cool things.
There's cool
even
stuff
in the
here.
Worst
Yeah.
ones.
And that's
there was cool stuff
where they're like, oh, there's anchor beings. And obviously there's a lot of this kind of like, especially in the multiverse stuff, which they do make fun of, pablum and that. But it's like, oh, no, Hugh Jackman doesn't want to play Wolverine anymore. They did a movie where that was his last Wolverine. So we're just going to end this entire universe because if Hugh Jackman doesn't want to play Wolverine, then it doesn't matter at all. And so he's like, nope. I'll go get Hugh Jackman. Gets Hugh Jackman. Yeah. They're like, no, we still don't want to do it. I'm a studio executive. I've made a decision. We're just killing all the. Congratulations, Deadpool. You made the cut. You're financially viable. You're now in the MCU, and this is his journey to save all these characters, and it's awesome. It's the Deadpool franchise not known for subtlety. That was done in a way that it took me 2 days to fully appreciate how great it was. And it was awesome.
The Johnny Storm reveal like Spider-Man No Way Home. They did a great job of, walked into theaters, didn't know the other characters were coming. I was able to, I think, avoid knowing that. I think it was, I don't think I knew that. And then I had no idea Chris Evans was going to be this. And then the reveal where you see the blue uniform, and then Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool is luring you in. There it is, the blue and the red, the commanding voice, and you're just hooks in my mouth, getting pulled along, and then he starts to swear a lot, and he's a little angry, like what's going on with this, and then flame on, and then you're just died. I mean, that was just that was amazing. That's what I loved. But like, yeah, for the deep cuts kind of stuff. Once Blade walked in, I'm like, all right, this is, you gave me. I am never going to have. If I never get another fan casting again, I will be very happy that you at least put Blade, Wesley Snipes.
You put Big Wes back on the screen. As Blade. Yeah, Wesley Snipes like gave a quote to somebody talking about that process, and he's like, yeah, it'd been 20 years since he heard from Ryan Reynolds after shooting Blade 3, because Ryan Reynolds was in Blade 3. And he was like, he gets a text, and he's like, hey, we have this idea. Would you be okay hopping on a call to talk about it? And Wesley Snipes was like, well, it's not going to happen. Like, I've kind of walked away from Blade a while ago, like when they didn't want to make Blade 4. And also they're doing a new movie. Like they're not going to want me. But look, Ryan Reynolds, I'll take the call for you. And apparently the call was like 5 minutes where Ryan Reynolds is like, yeah, everyone's on board. Do you want to do it? And he's like, yeah, cool. We'll give you dates. That was it. And it shows you how much stroke Ryan Reynolds and Sean Levy had on this project to put it together in a way that I think really just benefited everything.
Well, and on top of that, you have that moment where the curiously phrased line, "Only Wesley Snipes has ever played Blade. Only Wesley Snipes will ever play Blade." 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Deadpool looks to camera. I don't know if he's saying this guy's under a delusion or if he's saying, "Did you just get a press release?" But it plays either way.
Yeah. I mean, apparently the new Blade is still slated for next year. I think that'll get pushed back, but we'll see. It has certainly been in development hell. Although, when you got a character that gets that kind of reaction in this movie, it's like, come on, guys, it's Blade. Just he goes around at night, he's killing vampires. They're Euro trash. It's amazing. Like, how you can't. Don't screw this up. He's the Night Stalker. He's got a katana. He does some kicks.
It's fascinating when you just see how much now of the story of a thing being made becomes the story. It's funny because I watched one of these movie shows and they had a guy brought on, some other people to talk about it. And they bring in one of his friends who's a long time movie fan, whatever thing. And he's like, well, the thing is, this is supposed to fix the MCU. And then he goes like, well, we don't know. The MCU is still broken and we'll see in Brave New World because how are they solving the multiverse thing? And I'm like, no, we mean MCU, like the machine that makes the story.
Yes,
not the timeline within the story. That was a very, funny moment as I'm watching somebody review. I'm like, you understand this isn't real, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, and that was the key, is that obviously even referenced in the movie, like when he brings Hugh Jackman in and says, "Welcome to the MCU, you're joining at a low point," or like, "Hey, can we knock it off with the multiverse stuff? It's confusing and stupid."
It's bad. It's bad. Nobody likes it. It's bad.
The movies have had a lot of problems for a lot of reasons. I don't think it's because of the casting. They put a lot of great actors in some of these movies and TV shows that have sucked. Like Secret Invasion has a murderer's row cast. There is just a tremendous amount of talent in that cast, and that show is borderline unwatchable with like a great source material. This was an example of true passion being put into a project that there are truly passionate fans for. So passionate that only days after Deadpool and Wolverine becomes the hit that it becomes, more news out of the MCU, right, Maine?
Yeah, so when continuing along the what is it? 30-year history of us talking about this stuff, almost.
Yep.
My analysis had been, I think after seeing Deadpool, was we'll know Disney's serious if Iger starts writing checks, because the problem had been is under Bob Chapek. And I'm sympathetic to Bob Chapek, just trying to manage an enterprise that's everything from a news network to Space Mountain, to Spider-Man is just a big thing. There's a lot of different things you have to think about, make decisions on, which is hard. But he made a lot of decisions that I think put them into a trajectory that was sort of not maybe the best in the short term. One of them was increasing the amount of content, but also, and this wasn't just start under Chapek, because they kind of wanted to lower the amount of. Disney is cheap. Disney, for everybody to know, within the industry, Disney is known as being notoriously cheap, and they like to get up and coming people they can write smaller checks to, and they don't like to write bigger checks. Sometimes that's cool because you can give people a shot or challenge at something. You can go to a Jon Favreau, who's still establishing himself as a director, and say, "Do you want to do a thing called Iron Man?" And he's like, "Cool." And they're like, "We need a big star." And like, "Well, we can't afford, can't afford Tom Cruise,
Yeah.
or Brad Pitt. Who do we got? Like, well, nobody wants to hire, it's hard for, Robert Downey Jr. is doing great work, but he's not as hireable as he was before.
There was a problem with him getting insured at the time because they
Yeah.
didn't want to risk the fact that he would fall off the wagon during a production.
And he at that point, he'd done several years of being sober.
Yeah.
He did, some great movies and stuff.
Did
Shane
Wonder
Black was the
Boys,
only one that Shane Black was the only person who would cast him, and God bless Shane Black for that. So, they make a bet, and then it becomes a huge hit, and they immediately, hey, we need an Iron Man 2 next Tuesday. Like, get it out now, and, we'll do that. But anyhow, Disney, Disney has always been sort of the cheaper studio, and to its effect, that's why Disney's still around, has lasted this long, but they did not like to pay, the big talent deals, and that included for writers and directors too. And so, reluctantly with RDJ, they did that, but by the end of it, like Robert Downey Jr.'s take was like, his total take for the Marvel franchise was like in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And, Marvel wanted to say, well, let's try out some new talent, but talent is hard. It is really, really, really hard to scope somebody out and to figure out, how are we going to build this person up? And sometimes it's unpredictable. When Chris Hemsworth you watch the first Thor movie, and you think that, this guy's going to become the greatest comedic actor in the Marvel universe, and my opinion, he is. It's hard. So anyhow, when it came to writers and directors, you had the Russo brothers did a wonderful run. Russo brothers did Winter Soldier. They did Civil War, which very much is an Avengers movie.
Yeah.
It was I love that more than the Avengers. And then they did, Infinity War and Endgame. And those 4 movies, I think, are among the best Marvel's ever done. And then the Russo brothers became so hot, so popular, Disney, those paychecks were harder for Disney to write. And so they went off, and I don't know if you followed this, but they did the series, I think it was Citadel for
It was Prime,
Marvel,
right?
Amazon Prime. And Citadel was fascinating because Citadel, let me get the budget on this. I don't know if you remember the budget on this. It was a $300 million series.
Jeez Louise.
They had versions of it shot in other countries, different stuff. It starred, was it Richard Madden, Priyanka Chopra, Jonas now, Stanley Tucci. And so they did 6 episodes. So a $300 million show. And they did all the other versions, the Citadel, Diana for Italian, and Indian Citadel, Honey Bunny. So was it basically this universe, show? How many of you seen it?
I have not. No. I have not. It has not made it to my queue.
I don't know anybody who watched this. I don't know anybody who saw the show. Like zero. I've never spoken to somebody who watched what was apparently the up until like Rings of Power, which one of the things Amazon Prime is really great at, the most expensive shows that nobody wants.
Does it suck? Have you watched it?
No, I never got, the topic wasn't even interesting to me.
What is the plot? There's some super sexy spy people that are doing a super sexy spy thing.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
Should have called it Super Sexy Spies if that's what it is.
Yeah. So, and again, it's one of these things where, and as Dr. Kyron says, I never heard of this up and down. You think about that, where, at the $300 million show, and by the way, for a company like Amazon, $300 million is a significant amount of money because it's literally can be the bottom line of success of something. So they clearly want us to be a big hit. The Russo brothers had other stuff in production. Problem is, and Feige knows this, the problem is with writer directors who become very, very talented, they get a lot of projects and you might get them to work on your project. But if they're doing 4 other projects at the same time, you do not get 100% of that person. And you see that why did Game of Thrones, the last couple seasons, feel like nobody was home? Benioff and Weiss, I think, are amazing showrunners, 2 of the best showrunners ever. But their deal with HBO, the real payoff was going to be doing new shows and stuff. And so they went off to go do a new HBO show and things like that. So anyhow, long story short, Feige realized if you look at what happened with Marvel, the Marvels came out and was originally budgeted at $200 million. Now, normally when they do reshoots, they budget that in. The budget for a film includes reshoots, etc. Okay. they had to go spend another $75 million. Apparently, the Marvels cost $275 million. It was $75 million over budget for what it was. And Marvel had this realization: we can say we're not going to write these extra checks or pay this money, but we end up having to pay for it anyways, and the quality is suffering hugely. So somewhere they decided, let's go write a check again, and they decided to write a check. And that realization was they brought Robert Downey, and we and Justin and I have been talking, like, they're going to have to write checks to bring in the bigger talent, to bring in. There are a lot of amazing young talented people to work on Marvel projects, but they don't have enough authority to push back or to insist on stuff. And so they end up getting stuff made by committee. And so it's not a knock on anybody who's producing anything. There are some projects by people who I think that have sucked, that I don't think it was the fault of the directors or the showrunners. I don't think it was their fault. I think it was them in the committee. So we had talked about, like, yeah, they're going to have to write checks. They're going to have to be willing to pay money. And we thought, like, yeah, they're going to bring out Robert Downey Jr. It won't necessarily be Tony Stark. It'll be a variant. And then, of course, Comic-Con happens a day later. And
Well, this is the conversation that I was not privy to. I heard like maybe 3 sentences from this conversation, and I was riveted. I wanted to subscribe immediately to the Justin and Andrew speculate wildly.
our fan fiction
Yes.
of
Yes.
how you write Doctor Doom in
well, there's that. But I just want to add, the thing that was amazing, the thing that made me really happy was, because the day before, because I said, oh, like the Russos are back, and I'd read a headline and they hadn't been confirmed. And then Feige goes on stage, Kevin Feige goes on stage, and he brings out the Russo brothers. And I'm thrilled because, like I said, the 4 of my favorite Marvel movies, those guys did. And I'm like, oh, and I know you've got to write a check for them. Like, that was Feige going to Iger, like, we need to pay, because Marvel looked at what happened downstream. If you don't go see the Marvels, then you're not buying the merchandise, and you're not going to go to Disney. You're not going to subscribe to Disney Plus because it's some spinoff and whatever. It's not just the box office. It is the downstream.
Yes.
Even if those movies just broke even, they still make a huge amount in other merchandising and all these other things. And those properties were just losing value. And you know, when you have, and I'll tell you the brilliance of Deadpool versus Wolverine, by the way, too, in a second, but they realized we need to write checks. We need to pay. And Robert Downey Jr. said, great, I'll come back. I'm going to want, gold place platinum,
the rumor is 80 million total, no back end, but he essentially gets his own like small village.
I don't know that the number. I'd heard the Russos were getting paid a flat like 60, and then they don't know what
RDJ is getting paid. Okay, well maybe that is.
I would imagine he would probably a flat plus a bit. I don't know, but anyhow, his insistence though was he insisted, and to the credit and why I think he is a really neat human is he said, I want the Russo brothers. It's the Russo brothers and nobody, because the Russos were consistently the best, most dependable movie directors. Their movies are distinct and great. And he said, you've got to hire them. He could have probably taken a higher fee instead. Anybody. He said, you've got to hire the team that made the best stuff. And they agreed. And that to me was like, great. That's what made me excited about it.
Yeah. No, it appears that financially you have all the talent that has done this before, and you have a financial incentive to say, regardless of what happens, we are not screwing up these Avengers movies. We have one in which Doctor Doom will be the villain, and then we have Secret War, for which Doctor Doom will almost assuredly play a large part, and the part of Doctor Doom will be played by Robert Downey Jr. Chew on that, nerds. Like that is, and indeed I am salivating and masticating all over this very idea as we speak.
I feel like this is a gateway moment where we either keep talking for the next 2 hours, or we decide to say, or we decide to say it's been after.
Well, let me give you one for follow-up, okay? Just to give you an idea to understand how things affect downstream. So Marvel buys Fox. Marvel gets all these Fox characters, including the X-Men, Deadpool, Blade, all of this sort of stuff, right? So they buy Fox. Feige tells Sean Levy and Ryan Reynolds, yes, go make your Deadpool movie. There's a couple guys. Yes, it's going to be R. We get it. It'll be the first Disney, I don't know, Disney's logo wasn't on there, but like the first, Disney-owned Touchstone made R movie. So it's not the first Disney R produced R movie, but whatever. We'll let you do a first Marvel movie with an R that we produced. We'll do that. That's fine. That's great. Whatever. They go in, they go bring in these Fox characters. They do a wonderful end credit scene where they show you scenes of the making of the Fox universe and all of that. Disney owns the back catalog. They own the original FF movies. They own the X-Men movies. They own this. And for many people, the thing now comes into, oh, I want to go watch that Fantastic Four movie. Oh, I want to go watch Blade. I want to go watch Elektra.
Yeah.
Because you made them... Blade's great. Blade's a masterpiece. You did not make the other ones better movies, but you gave those movies a place to sit, and you gave them a reason now to watch them again. And you made those original movies more valuable.
Yeah,
that's the brilliance of it. That was such the brilliance of this movie. It's like, oh my god, like they took these things that are the bargain bin of Walmart, and now they made them Criterion Collection.
And just wait until they run into who they think is Killmonger in the Void in Deadpool and Wolverine 2.
Gentlemen, it's been after.
Nailed it. Oh yeah.
So do I, Chiron. I want a great X-Men series of movies too. All right, friends.
All right, got a lot of shuffling of bodies. I'll see you tomorrow, Andrew.
Yeah, Brian, I'll see you. I'll give you we'll coordinate. What time you plan to roll into town?
Allegedly 3:30, but then I gotta pick up a car.
Yeah. You flying in or?
Yeah, probably not to the same airport that you're flying into.
All right. Let me see. When do I land? I land 12:50, so I'll just go ahead to the airport. All right.
Okay. All right. We'll figure it out. We'll be in touch.
All right, brother.
All right.
Later.
Love you guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Ba-ba-ba-ba.